Alright, so I'm going to be going over the motor and servo commands. For motors, the most important command is this one right here, setting the power of a motor. So the first part you'll see I have motor 1. This is where you put the name of your motor. So in this case it's motor 1. It might end up being like front right motor or whatever you've named it in the configuration. Then you are telling it that you want to set the power, and you set the power to whatever's in the parentheses. So in this case, I have 0.75, meaning that the power of the motor will be 3/4 its full power. So you only really want to use a number in the parentheses either during autonomous or when you have a function where you press a button and it does something. An example of this would be the strafing that we used in the Skystone season, where we would press the bumper and it would just move at a constant speed. If you want a variable speed, you're going to change this to some function on the gamepad that the drivers can adjust. For example, the joysticks. So if I add in the joystick for gamepad 1, now the power is controlled by that joystick. And since this is a variable function, that means if I push the joystick up all the way, it'll go full power. But if I only push it halfway, it'll go half power. And this is mainly used in driver controlled. If you ever need to negate a value, you're always just going to put a negative right in the middle of the statement right before your variable. So I would put a negative in front of the gamepad, or if I had a number here, I would put a negative in there. Another thing is if you want to slow down or speed up the motor. So let's say I had it set to a joystick. I can multiply this by a factor, so I can multiply it by 1/2, and that'll slow down the joystick. So this might be useful if you want a slow mode. So I could have an if statement here, and if the driver was pressing the A button, then it would go at half speed. You could also do speeding it up if you wanted to do 2. Sometimes that doesn't work with the more advanced motors, but sometimes it'll work, so you have to just test it out. A similar thing happens for servos. You want to start off by naming your servo. So in my case, it's servo 1. And again, this is just whatever you've put the configured name to be. Then you're going to use, instead of set power, set position. The servos work on a position from 0 to 1, 0 being 0 degrees and 1 being 180 degrees. So you're going to set it to any position between 0 and 1. So right now, I have it going all the way to 180 degrees. If I set the position to 0.5, that means it's going only to 90 degrees. And I should note that these only work at the moment. So if I had a if statement here, if the B button is pressed, it'll go to 0.5. But if I have something earlier in the code that sets it as a default, so like when the robot initializes, it's supposed to start and stay at position 0, then as soon as I let go of the B button, it's going to go back to 0. So if you wanted to make like a toggle thing, you would have to have 2 separate buttons.